Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to today's Power Platform session. I'm really excited to welcome Julia back to the talk. So it's going to be a really interesting session. I'm 100% sure of that. Just a quick couple of bits from me just before we start. The first thing is there's some new stuff on the platform. So we've got the classical income statement in Power BI Better Together session that Mark delivered. So you can go and check that on the site now if you want to watch the video back on that. Rishi has just asked me to mention that he's doing his session at SQL Bits on Saturday. So if you feel like tuning into that, Rishi obviously knows an awful lot about designing within Power BI and finance data and storytelling with that. So strongly advise you to log into SQL Bits, and there's a number of great sessions there as well. I'll put this in the chat as well, but we'd really appreciate any feedback you've got. So if you've got any comments or questions or anything that you want to know, feel free to fill in the feedback form. And the final thing from me before we hand it over, to say Belinda Allen is coming back to do a talk. So Belinda, for those of you at Belinda's last talk, is an MVP, a really interesting talk because she's going to do some more stuff on Dynamics BC in Power BI. But that's everything from me. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Julia, who's going to kick us off.
Sounds
All
good.
over to you.
Thank you, Nate. All right. So whilst I'm trying to figure out the coordination between there we go. So yeah, do any of you guys use FinOps? Feel free by any times, just so you're aware. I'm much more of a conversational sort of person. So if you want to say something throughout the day or make a comment or say, what happens if you click that? Please do. I don't really have like a presentation-y sort of speech. I'll go through some slides, and I always have slides as backup because you never know what happens with internet. But if there's something that you guys really want to get out of this, then just say something or type it if you don't want to actually talk. And we'll go on from there. But I suppose let's get started first. So essentially, this is the idea. I was having a chat with Rishi and the guys about the wider D365 around the Microsoft offerings and the different financial softwares and that we have. And we started talking about what D365 was and what it wasn't, because there's a lot of misunderstanding. I found that a lot of people not 100% sure on what D365 actually was. So I thought I would talk about that. But then also, realistically, D365, it's just another ERP or a financial platform. So, all the little apps that we do with that I've done in my role, it doesn't mean it has to be limited. It's really fun ideas for other roles as well. So, and yeah, there's 100% ways. They're very much made to talk to each other. So, rightio, let's do the slides. So who I am, this is a lovely corporate photo of me. My name's Julia Simpson. I'm a senior consultant for a partner. As for the partner, who cares about that? That's not what we're here for. I don't want that to be, I don't want that to be this sort of session. I'm Australian. I grew up and lived in Australia. I went to school there. I got educated there. All my family are there. I worked there for 10 years of my life before deciding to come over to the UK as an experiment, and I've been here now for 7 years. I'm qualified with CPA Australia. I worked in many different finance roles back in Australia and over here in the UK. I started off as a tax accountant and through the graduate program. Then I hated it. Oh, I'm sorry. Anyone that does do tax, I give credit to you guys, tax and audit. I don't like it. It's horrible. Everyone hates you. You never go to a client and they're excited to see you. Or at least as a consultant now, they're usually happy to see me. Yeah, I've been working with Dynamics, and I started off using, what do we use? We use QuickBooks in Australia and MYOB and AS400, and we migrated over to Dynamics 2000, Xapta, then we upgraded to 2009. And that's what I used as in different in accountant roles. And I've been as a consultant since 2012. And yeah, that's the company logo that I work on, but we'll just skip over that. Because let's be honest, they're a fantastic company. They've been good to me, and they are a really good company, and they do. The lovely, really cool thing about the company that I work for, which I just realized is all over these slides, is that we do have a team that is just made up of accountants. So we're the finance team. So we have teams that specialize in like supply chain and manufacturing, and my team is purely accountants. So we are the debits and credits. So what is Dynamics D365 in terms of the wider sort of scheme? And where does Power Platform and Microsoft, where does Dynamics sit in the Microsoft sort of offerings? Boop, boop, boop. And here is a lovely little chart that I've seen that I feel is one of these things I saw and I thought, oh, that looks quite pretty. It is not the full thing. I've got another slide in there, but essentially there's a whole bunch of offerings. So here are some of them: marketing, customer service, sales, field services, supply chain management, or things that you might have heard of. The Dynamics 365 customer service and sales, or CRM, is really, really popular. Finance and operations, or finance, commerce, supply chain, and human resources and project operations, is a little bit more common. So, but then when it comes down to the Dynamics world, we kind of split things in half. Now, whether or not that's mostly because the databases originally, they were two different databases, but now they're kind of, as time goes along, we're getting a bit more joined up. So we have what we call the CE half, or the original CRM. So often when people refer to Dynamics 365, they'll refer to CRM, Dynamics CRM. And that's because they had that name first. I'll be honest with you. It was Microsoft Dynamics 365 CRM. And then later on, we were still called Microsoft Dynamics AX or Exapta. But now we are part of the Dynamics 365 brand as well. So we're more of the FinOps sort of side. And that then leaves poor little old Business Central over to the outside. I didn't want to forget them because they're a very important part of the Dynamics story as well. When it comes to the sort of financy sort of offerings, okay, actually, I'll go to the next slide. Just so you guys are all aware, anyone that's come in, I do love for us to be more of a casual, chatty sort of thing. So by any means, I'm just happy to jump in and chat. As we go through the sort of demonstration and we start talking and thinking, I haven't got a set process that I want to do. So I thought it'd be fun to have a bit of a talk. So when it comes to the financy sort of side, or the ERP side, so ERP stands for Enterprise Resource Planning, and essentially it's one of these. It's one of these solutions. Again, not everyone knew when I first started talking to them what an ERP stood for. I often forgot about that. An ERP is one of these sort of solutions that it does your supply chain management, it does your project management, it does everything. It's one of these things, I love saying this, it does everything but nothing well, but it's getting better. So it's very much designed for your end-to-end sort of business process sort of thing. Now, in terms of what we offer within the Microsoft hat, we kind of break it up into FinOps and Business Central. The reason is that Business Central has been designed for the smaller businesses, so your smaller and medium-sized companies. It's very much designed for that. It has a different database, and it stems from the Navision days. It comes from those backgrounds, if anyone knows about that sort of information. It's just an older version. Whereas the FinOps one is very much designed for the medium to big size companies. So we're talking like a couple 100 million turnovers plus. There's an awful lot of big name businesses out there that you may not realize that are actually using finance and operations. So those are what we call the ERP offerings. Project operations and supply chain management and finance, they all come under the FinOps branch, whereas Business Central is special. Oh, fantastic question, Naveen. I'm actually going to come around to that a little bit later on. Naveen has asked about the entity concept in D365. I have a whole nother slide that we're going to talk about entities in a moment. So we'll come up to that really, really soon. CRM, a lot of people, and this is very much what Microsoft is known for, Dynamics CRM. It has a fantastic range of solutions. But now recently they're starting to bring out the more modular solutions. So they have things for omni-channel, they have things for human resources or for commerce. And these are designed to work a little bit more independently. So you can kind of just like a pick and choose sort of system. And of course, where will we be without the AI sort of offerings? So we have such as sales insights, customer insights, financial insights even, although on that one, but product insights. And these are, again, sort of solutions that are designed so that you can port and talk to them with different sort of databases, really. So you don't have to be using just finance and operations. You can connect to maybe your the Amazon Analytics, for example, or you can connect to different SAP or Oracle as well, and get that sort of AI beneficial and it's reporting in that sense. There's also some really mixed reality stuff. I haven't personally gotten into the mixed reality stuff. It's very hard. In my line of business, I can't quite understand how I could use mixed reality yet, trying to reconcile a balance sheet or my inventory. But it could be fun, you know. In one sense, I'm not quite sure, but mixed reality is going to be, it's actually really cool for those people who are actually out on site and physical doing the work, not stuck behind the curtains. So what's my next slide? Okay, so this is where I'm now going to go over like the typical modules that FinOps includes, and a lot of people don't understand quite how big finance and operations is. So let's divide it into finance, supply chain, and commerce. So these are all the typical sort of financial modules that you would expect to see in any sort of finance system. We have accounts payable and accounts receivable. We have a budgeting module. We have cash and bank. We have cost accounting. We have a consolidation module because, again, remember, it's designed for very big companies, so we do need to be able to do those sort of complex consolidations, particularly around FX. It has a whole module designed just for credit and collections, one around expense management, fixed assets, general ledger, project management, revenue recognition, tax management, time and attendance. So those are the sort of modules that come under the finance branch, and they're very much what I would consider a good practice or good need, maybe without project management and revenue management, but the most of them are typical everyday business sort of modules. Then we have the supply chain. So this will vary depending on what kind of industry you're in. If you're in like a retail or a manufacturing, you may use bits and bobs of each. And supply chain will cover stuff such as asset management, cost management, inventory management, fleet management, all the managements, master planning. I was hoping the next one was going to be a management just to sink in. Procurement and sourcing. So master planning is like MRP. So that's what I really think MRP is quite cool because it takes your sales orders, it takes your minimum levels of stock, and it creates the orders, the procurement orders for you, which leads to procurement and sourcing. Product information management, so to help you manage the life phase of your products. Production control, sales and marketing services, supplier, transportation, and warehouse management. So it does do an awful lot. Which is often why when you do get finance and operation consultants, they specialize in something. So I specialize, for example, in this section over here. I really try to avoid this section if I can. I do know how to set up like a basic item and do purchase orders and sales orders, yeah. But it's one of these things that there's enough here to manage and learn about as well. And then there's the commerce side that is booming on down, which covers omnichannel sales, e-commerce sales, retail sales, call center-based sales, POS-based sales. It has a whole POS element to it, which I always find really fun to play around with. And really that all of those just kind of help you with your order management or customer management. So this is the finance and operations sort of branch. There is the stuff such as project operations that's coming out, which is kind of replacing the project and revenue modules or working with the project modules. And then there's also HR-based modules as well, which will manage your your personnel information. And maybe your hierarchies. And those are really useful from a finance point of view because it helps with like the hierarchies and your workflows where things go. Whether or not it's an end-to-end solution, that's everyone's own business preferences in that situation. So what I love about FinOps is I do really love FinOps. Despite me taking the piss out of it constantly, it is fantastic. And maybe it's because I was using MYOB and AX400, AS400 beforehand. And I've never experienced other solutions. I haven't actually played around with SAP or Oracle. But here are some of the things that I love. And hopefully we're going to do more of a demo on this than we are going to do presentations. So we'll start off with, here is our lovely little FinOps. I have a couple of different environments because environments have different tiers and the tiers have different costings behind it. So this one's a bit, this environment here is a bit cheaper to run day to day than another environment that I was going to show in a moment. You'll notice it's all cloud-based, and that's that's part of life. That's part of the Dynamics world and the Microsoft world. We're becoming more and more cloud-based. So when you log in, we get greeted with a whole bunch of what we call workspaces. And these workspaces are actually what I really do love about D365 compared to the AX12 and the 2012 days, in that they are designed to be like this kind of one-stop shop, and it demos really well. And also it's actually really practical. Of these things to do, and they all kind of follow the same format, which I find is really quite interesting and useful. So if we go down to purchase invoicing, supplier invoice entry, here we go. We click on one of the workspaces. All the workspaces are pretty much going to use the exact same sort of layout, in the fact that we're going to have these little tiles here. Now these tiles are really, really cool because what we can do with these tiles is we can add more tiles in, we can personalize the tiles, we could hide a tile if we wanted to. And so this shows me that I have 2 invoices that currently haven't been approved, I have 0 invoices that have been that are on hold, and I have no unposted journals. So that's pretty cool. I find that's really useful. But this here, this is nice. This is nice for like if you're when you first log in the morning and you want like a quick little BI sort of count. And it's not proper BI in that sort of situation, but it is still quite fun. This here I find really, really useful because, again, the accountant in me loves these sort of lists. I love a list. Give me a good little list. And we got this full list functionality here, and you can switch between 2 and you can have a look at the different lists. As typical of a Microsoft product, you would expect it to be very similar in terms of how it interacts. And essentially anything that looks like a table really can interact like a table. So we can say we can do all sorts of filtering. So we can say is exactly or begins with A, B, C, and we can filter it just like you would a normal table. And also, depending on what version you're on, you can also do like semi-groupings as well, just like you would in a table. So you can do sums and you can group by as well. I think that's really that's a lot of, honestly, it's a lot of fun. To be brutally honest, I just think it's fun. And then you have all these quick little buttons up here that can take you right to what you need to do. Hi, Rishi, welcome. We're all very, very casual at the moment. So
hey, Julia, how's it going?
Good, good, good. I'm now going about what the things that I like about FinOps. And
Cool.
I like workspaces. I particularly like these tiles. And the really nice thing about these tiles is if you do like if you find your magic little view and you put in all your filters, you can save that tile to drill back into it, which again is really useful. Rightio, what's the next thing that I said that I love about it? Right. We're gonna go off script a little bit, or off presentation a little bit, because I want to show you the next really cool thing about it. So here we are within FinOps. We have our little this is all pending supplier invoices. Say we've forgotten what to do, and let's be honest, if you don't do a process every day, you forget what to do. So we have this really cool thing called Task Recorder, which we access by pressing the little cog and the little Task Recorder, and we can play a recording as a guide. And what this is going to do, we can connect to our centralized database, which is called LCS, which I really hope hasn't broken on me. Fantastic, it's broken on me. That's just what I want. But so you can play the little task recorder, and what I'll do, we can also press help, and that was going to search through. If the task recorders were working, that would search through. But in the situation where my task recorders aren't linked anymore, I can always just play from a file. Play recording as a guide, open from my PC, always have a backup somewhere along the lines. And just go into the folder where we keep all the backups. Okay. So this task guide here is called Put a Vendor on Hold. And so what is essentially, you got the little steps there. So that, again, that's really nice that you got the little steps, but it's what also is really cool is it's kind of it's going to do a little bit of a wiggle for you and a little bit of a dance. So I'll go into the module. So purchase ledger suppliers, all suppliers, purchase ledger suppliers, all suppliers. Okay, and it's just a little dance, and it says, okay, select the supplier, and I just love it. I think it's so much fun. Look at the little dance. You click on supplier. Oh, I need to skip this step, but let's go to the next step because we're already there, and we can then click on hold. So this is a really cool thing. Is that so many times, I've done in the past, I've forgotten how to press play or how to do a process, because let's face it, I only have to do it once a month, or even less even, particularly if you're new to the role. So that's one of these really cool things. Hopping into this environment here, I wanted to show you something that is also really cool, and I think maybe a bit unique for wish we a dancing tooltip in Power BI. I tell you, I would love a dancing tooltip in Power BI. You are going to have to apologize. I'm going to have to apologize to you all. I have attempted to do a BI report, and I'm going to show it off to you later because it really does show the power between FinOps to Power BI to Power Apps as well, getting all three connected and talking together. But what we do have that I think is really nice within finance is we do have embedded BI reports. So these are BI reports that Microsoft have created based off FinOps data, which they view as this is what the kind of information that financial people want to do. So for some reason, not all of my BI reports are working. I don't know what's going on here. I mean, it's still working. It's teeny tiny, but we do have this financial analytics one. So Microsoft have, honest to God, really, really tried with this sort of stuff. Like they've put a bit of thought into this about like what the sort of report should we add into this. And there are some really cool things, and it reacts and interacts just like you would expect with BI. So you have the ability to change the filters. If you click on something again, it reloads everything and it does all the calculations for you as well. So it does interact like a typical BI in that situation. And it does work from your finance and operations data. So that's really, really cool. But how many times do people want to actually it's a good question. Do any of you guys ever do a report where you do expenses by region on a global scale? Maybe I've just never worked for businesses that are big enough to want to do that. But it is a proper BI report, because my theory is that it cannot be a Microsoft BI report if it doesn't have the map in it. Because every time I see a BI report that's been done by Microsoft has the map in it. But they're pretty good. And the fact that you get them just out of the box, part of your license, so you don't actually need a BI license to use these, is probably the really cool part about this. And as long as you configure your chart of accounts right, then you're pretty set. Rightio. Other things that I like. What have we got? Okay. Oh, now I appreciate that last week we had you guys did your P&L and your basic P&L and trial balance sort of stuff with Power BI. What we have within finance and operations is a tool called Management Reporter. And essentially it's this tool that allows you to create essentially anything that's in your trial balance. You can then create a custom-based report on it, and you can then interact with it. So what we got here is, I'll hop into it. I love Management Reporter. I wish I had Management Reporter back when in the 2009 days. We didn't have it at that stage. It's a 2012 process, but it's a lot of fun. We now call it financial reports, and it's actually been designed so that people that accountants can use and manipulate with the information. It's not kind of like draggy droppy as like BI kind of is, and you don't have to worry about the database and any sort of connections, because again it just uses your ledger information. So you can create anything that's in your ledger. I said any sort of dimension or analysis code combination, you can then split your information up, do different tiers and different reports. And you can have as many of these reports as you need to, which again is also really, really useful. So if you just do as many as you want. So you can have a monthly pack, a weekly pack, a yearly pack, if you so want to. And really nice thing is it exports into Excel amazingly, but you can fully interact with the data. So you can drill down, and eventually you can drill down. There we go. And you go back to the actual source transaction. So this has changed my company into another legal entity because I was in one legal entity. I'm now in a different one. And from here, I can see all these different invoices. And I can also go back to the original documents behind there. So the original document could be a sales invoice. This one's a free text invoice, which means it's a non-stock invoice in that situation. And I can actually look at that invoice, reprint it. From here, I can also drill to the customer as well if I wanted to. And look at all the customer, there we go, there's the customer account. Look at the customer information and drill back into that. I can have a look at all my little transactions for this customer. I can see what's open, what's closed, and it just, everything being connected. It makes reconciliation a lot easier. It makes you being able to find where everything is a lot easier. So it's really useful in that sort of situation. Right. So we have, I'll move this over here. Workspaces, we've covered off Workspaces. Everything being connected, we've covered that one off. The task recorder, we've looked at that. Excel. What would a system be without Excel? Particularly a Microsoft solution. And as you would expect, any sort of Microsoft solution, we interact with Excel. And it's fantastic. It really is. So again, we'll go back to this is a general journal view. So here I can see all the sorts of journals, and at any time if I want a static picture, so non-dynamic, I can just export all my rows into and open it up in Excel. That will give me a snap in time sort of picture. It's not going to be one of these dynamic things. That's just not how it works. But if there's any sort of journaling sort of process, so if you think about general journals or maybe purchase order lines, we also have the ability to open it in Excel. And what that's going to give us then is a dynamic link so that we can download that information into Excel. We can update it. We can copy and paste from some templates that we have, press publish, and it goes back on up in. So that's a really cool part about this, especially if Excel is your jam. The only thing I have to say about that one is it's not designed for like million line transactions. You know, we're talking like 10 to 20,000. I wouldn't push any more than that those sort of transactions through this sort of functionality. It does cope with quite a large volume, but again, it just takes time when you do more volumes. Here we go. And this whole Excel interaction is very possible through the Microsoft Dynamics Office 365 Addin. And the lovely thing about this is if you don't have, it's very secure. So if you don't have the access to do it, you can't do it. So you do need to have a role. If I try to, for example, if I don't have access to create sales orders, I wouldn't be able to hack in through the backline and do this. But it's just refreshing the database, it's connecting in. And so now from within here, I can make changes. I can amend amounts. I can copy and paste from different workbooks and paste them in. And I just press on publish, and that's gone back into Dynamics. Once it's in Dynamics, you can then send it through workflow for approval and do whatever you need to do. But I think it's really useful. And anyone that tries to convince a finance person that you'll never be able to get rid of Excel is you're always going to have to be in Excel. There's always going to be some sort of level of Excel. No matter how beautiful your BI dashboards are, accountants, sometimes they're still going to want Excel. It's too heavily ingrained at the moment. Financial Reporter, really powerful tool, really, really useful. Now, the downside about Financial Reporter is it doesn't do subledgers. So, for example, if you wanted to go from your income statement and have your income statement split out by customers, unless you hard code the information, it's not going to work. Into the trial balance. Again, the subledger information is kept in something else. The ledger information is kept on a different sort of table. And Naveen, you're 100% right. Everyone wants things in Excel, even Power BI. You're never going to escape it, are we? We just can't. But it's getting better, and I think people are starting to accept it. Get at least the systems to do the calculation. something I used BI for the other day is I had one of our customers that had a massive VAT reconciliation problem. So we're talking like a couple of million lines per month. I couldn't get Excel to churn that sort of data. So what I ended up having to do was putting it into Power BI, getting Power BI to pivot it for me, and then exporting from that end information back into Excel for them. So we're never going to get rid of Excel. It's never going to happen, and that's fine by me. Right. Other really cool thing before I hop onto data entities, which very much is part of the thing, and I promised that I would talk about it a little bit with Naveen, is the improvements. So we have this super duper option, and there's an ideas portal. So if there's something that you don't like, and it exists for Power BI and for Power Apps as well, there's ideas portal. So if you guys don't know about it, I think it's like ideas.dynamics.com. And you get to vote for ideas that you love, and then those ideas get incorporated into the solution. And then that's where you can find them here under the feature management portal. Once they do come into play, you can then choose if you want to enable or disable them. The reason that they've done this is really just to kind of let people have the control, because when you implement new functionality, you have to test your old functionality to make sure it works. So they've wisely, even though you have to do updates every couple of months, you can choose if you want to enable new features. So we can choose any features that we want, and we can always press on enable, and we're good to go from there. So really useful there. And the last thing I want to talk about is data, because I appreciate that this audience, Chris, thank you, experience.dynamics.com/ideas. Okay, so data. Production-based environments, you do not have access really to data. We do have lots of options out there, lots of different options out there. You can export everything to data lakes, so you can pick your baseline tables, send them out to a data lake. From a data lake, you can then consume it. But we also have the very important concept called entities. So finance and operations is highly normalized. What I mean, for those who may not understand what I mean by that, is that if you have a look at a customer, for example, we go into one of our customers here. Here we go. One of the customers here. What you think? We see some basic information. We see a customer number. We see a name. We have a group. We have a currency. If I go into that, we have a telephone number. We have some phone information. So all stuff that you think is fairly straightforward. But in terms of how Dynamics stores it in the baseline tables, I think it's about over 6 or 7 tables where we store it. And that's just because it's a big system. But then we have the concept of entities, which you can find under data management. Boop, boop, boop. Here we are. Data management, and these are kind of like views or easy, they've got a whole bunch of different data and tables that are driven into them, and they're what we really use if we're going to connect to Power Apps, or if we're going to connect to Power BI to an extent. It doesn't really do transaction. It does do some sort of transactional information, but it was originally designed for like your sales order information or your customer information. Not so much like tax transactions or ledger transactions. But these entities essentially is what we use for integrations. It's how we get information in and out of the system. And we do have this data management module. Again, there's a whole bunch of automatic stuff behind it, but you can just pretty much, you click on export if you need to get information out. You give it a name. Fantastic little namings. We'll call this Power Platform Finance. At least that way we're not and we just choose our entities. So last time I saw there was over 2,000 entities, which sounds like a lot until you realize that not one of those entities is what you want. So we'll say anything that has invoice in it. For example, here we go, and we'll choose I don't want any of those. Sales invoice lines, that's a bit better. And then you can choose the format that you need to export it in. Now, of course, I'm going to choose Excel, but there are a whole bunch of different formats. We do have, different file types. We can send it back to Azure databases. We can send it to through XML elements. Pretty much in the type of format that your business needs it in, it can be done. And of course, it can also be done in Excel. And from there, you can also apply on filters. So if you don't want all the information, you can add that on in and you can export it. There's also the ability to do change-based tracking so that you're only exporting information since the last time if you need to do that. Really, really useful, really ways to go. So let's just go back to the presentation. We don't need, I've got another slide deck if any of you guys wanted of all just the BI reports that come with the system. So we have the collections overview is probably the best one out of the lot. It's just absolutely fantastic. You can see your credit limits, the balances, and with the financial insights, you'll be able to start applying AI for us, where it'll then analyze the payment trends and say, well, based on this, we're expecting you to have X amount of income coming in the next days because your customers always pay on Thursdays and it's a Thursday coming up. So there's some really cool AI stuff that's being incorporated with financial insights into FinOps. I don't know how it's going to work outside of FinOps, but it does sound cool. It does sound cool. Data management. Okay, this is the interesting part. This is the part that we really care about, and that's using it within finance and operations and the Power Platform. So I know it's never as good as what you get what you get when you make it your own. But it's out of the box, let's be honest. Okay, Power Platform. So when I refer to Power Platform, I don't actually mean BI. I know BI comes under the Power Platform, and I apologize. I appreciate that I've just hurt everyone in this room, but when I refer to Power Platform, I am really talking about like Power Apps and Power Automate and even Power Virtual Agents to a certain extent. And how do we work with Dynamics information and the Power Platform? So where I'm referring to Dynamics, yes, there are some fantastic things that we can connect to SAP and Oracle. I personally have never done that because I've never used the system, so I don't have access. But you can do that. So again, with Power Apps, if you want to work with the FinOps information, you have two options. You either chuck it into, well, three options. You can put it in Excel, which again, shouldn't recommend, or you can put it into CDS, or you can use the inbuilt connector. So again, Power Platform, we have this fantastic, or Power Apps and Power Automate, we have this thing called a Finance and Operation Connector, which allows us to do CRUD-based operations directly into FinOps. Really cool. Common Data Service is a database. It's a fancy database, don't get me wrong. And if you're using CE, you're already using it. And if you're using a model-driven app or a portal app, you're already using it because you have to use it for those sort of operations. But it is really cool. It's a relational database, so you can connect your different entities and tables together. You can export stuff into Blob. You got a full amount of security and field level security. And again, it is what Power, you guys might know this, is what Power Portals and Power Apps, model-driven apps work off as well. When it comes to finance and operations, if you want to use CDS and have your information into CDS, you have the free options. So Data Integrator is one of the options, and that is like a batch process. So it sends all the information at set times, chucks it all in. It goes either that way or that way, depending on what you need. It either goes in or out, depending on which way we're talking about it as well. And so you can batch your information, send it over. Really, really good for if you want to do end of day sort of bulk uploads. Fantastic for that. Dual Write is the new kid to the, well, actually second, it's not the new kid anymore. Dual Write's the middle child now. And that's fantastic as well. It is essentially the minute you do something within Power Apps, it will then do it within Finance and Operations, or CE, and it will then do it within Finance and Operations. So it's an almost instant sort of interaction, and it does work both ways. So if you do it within Finance and Operations, it then works within CE, and it's really quite powerful as well. And very, very useful for anyone that is going to be going down the full D365 circle. Then we have virtual entities. So virtual entities are essentially for anyone that's using like a model-driven app or a portal that wants their information from finance and operations but doesn't want it in CE. That's not really the right way to word it. It's like an interactable, but it is very much your information is still in finance and operations. So that's really cool. Rightio, the connector, what you can do within the connector, there's a couple of different things. So when we're using the connector within the Power App, you can only use it within Canvas apps, which is why Dual Write came about. Sorry, guys. people were complaining that we couldn't get FinOps information into model-driven apps. So again, we had low usability for it. So that's why we now have DualWrite. But again, the connector works amazingly within Canvas apps. You can feed, using your data entities, you can feed the information directly in, and you use that to maybe create records or update records. It does require you to have a finance and operation license, which quite frankly is expensive. So again, that's why a lot of people will send information into CDS. Not that I'm telling you guys how to avoid paying licenses, if there's anyone on the call from Microsoft. But a lot of people will then choose to send the information into CDS so that the CDS user license is a lot less expensive than a finance and operation license. Within Power Apps, Power Automate is really the powerful part, because we have the full CRUD operation. So we can create records, we can delete records, we can action them. So it's a lot of fun. We also have the ability to have business, if anything happens within finance and operations, we can use that as a trigger. And then from that trigger, we can then do stuff with that, connect to different databases, different data sources, and work with it that way. So, you know, Power Automate and Dynamics is really, it's designed to be together. Rightio. So let's hop in and we'll start doing a bit more demonstrations, because let's be honest, slides are boring. So I'm about to apologize. This is my version of a Power App. Remember, I have a lot of great qualities, and Power Apps may not be one of them. Oh no, what a bad time, don't even get signed out. Oh no, it's asking me to do a full sign in. You have everything prepped, hey? And then it does this to you. Oh, I don't have my connector. Right. I don't know what's happened, guys. I don't have my phone on me or anywhere near me. Okay, we're gonna have to hop back. Now, Power Apps and Power BI, really, really useful. If you guys have used Power BI before, you do have the ability to import Canvas apps. And Canvas apps, from there, you can then choose the information you feed into it, and that will then play around with that information. You can put it into a gallery. You can then modify it. So what this whole process in this app was designed to do is you would select the relevant element within Power BI. Now I've used the direct connector, so I'm connecting directly into finance and operations for this one. And I'm doing this via OData connectors. I shouldn't admit to doing that because, again, OData connectors are not designed for this sort of volume, but hey, what it is. And if you can kind of see behind the scenes, my list is growing. And the whole reason I did behind this is we wanted to interact with the data and then be able to select the information. Maybe you want to select old purchase orders, or you need to select purchase orders for a particular type and email your clients, you know, so saying, or not your clients, but your staff members saying, look, this item has been discontinued or is no longer available to purchase. Do you want to do something else? So you can select all these informations, and then we can use the app to further filter and modify and update the information, because it's all going to be connected. Righty. Oh, I've lost internet. That's why everything died on me. Okay. Back to my chat, and I wanted to show you a bot. So virtual agents is kind of the new kid to the block when it comes to the Power Platform and within finance and operations, but I do think it's really quite cute because it gives a guided sort of experience. So we kind of restrict what people can do. And that's really good from like a system creation thing, is we can control what we want people to see. So this is a bot that I've created, and it does connect to finance and operations, and it uses a whole Power Platform. So bots again start off with a certain trigger phrase. So it's on the left, credits on the right. And have you guys heard the accountant wrap? Okay, and it's a nice little way to do sort of, it's very much like Q&A, hugely like Q&A, but you control what you want it to say and what you want to do. So behind the scenes, I've told, and I'm going to flip over to that, what I want the process to be. So, okay, and this way you can control, okay, I want to be able to create a new purchase order. And it's going to say, and fantastic, what are you going to create the purchase order for? And I'm going to, TV. And so again, we're controlling what we want that sort of being for. We'll say what company is it for, USMF, so it's for US manufacturing, and we're getting it for cleaning materials. And And it's going to say, okay, now this is really cool because you can say about approx 5K. And what's going to happen is it's going to create a purchase requisition for us for 5,000. It's smart enough to be able to pick out that five amount here. And it's okay, it's thinking, it's running it, and it's saying, okay, well, here is your purchase requisition. You need to click on this link to go and open it up. So this link is designed to work with my personal login, which is for a different login. So we'll just quickly hop over to this login, copy in the same URL, so it looks at least a little bit better. And it's going to open up purchase requisitions prepared by me. And here we are. Here is our purchase order for our TV. And the fun part here is the amount is pulled through the 5,000. So that's really, really fun. And it's really actually quite simple and fun to do. So not Virtual Events Hub. By the way, Virtual Events Hub, for anyone that is interested, is really a lot of fun. As a virtual agent, it's very easy to kind of build it. You tell it what the triggers are and you kind of build it from there, and you can kind of build out the conversation. So one of the other options that I had, if we go back here whilst that's loading and scroll up a little bit. Okay, we can do a sales order inquiry. So you can send off a sales order information and it can send you back that information. That's really useful for around like click and collect based items as well. So maybe you can embed this into your website rather than into Teams. Another one, which is more relevant for you guys, is Power Automate has a connector to refresh BI datasets. So on this, if I was to click on this refresh dataset, it's probably going to have a bit of a heart attack on me. Yeah, it is. All right, we'll just trigger it off again. Okay, it's going to ask me what I want to do. And I'll refresh my BI. That's going to trigger off another flow that's then going to refresh the dataset behind things. Again, really quite cool, really quite fun. So here we are back in our virtual agent that I was talking to you about and how it all flows together. Topics. Okay, so here's my FinOps inquiry ones. I had a lot of fun and probably too much fun when I tried to create my trigger phrases. But you create your trigger phrases so that whenever you say this, it'll know to go to this bot. And from there, you essentially you guide the conversation. So you say, okay, well, this is the virtual, and then you say, what are my questions? So from within here, you do all your different questions, and then we go down. And really, if you think about it, for virtual agents, what we're using it for is pretty much to trigger flows. So if I have a look here on the purchase requisition, that's the one in the middle. We asked what was the requisition for, and we recorded the user's entire response. We asked them what was the legal entity for. We controlled it. We asked them what the procurement category was. We controlled that again. So we're trying to control things, to restrict things. And then we're going to trigger off the requisition flow, which is going to create that information. And that's all the fields that the flow itself wants. So really nice way of controlling your information and sending information through. Different ways we can use Power Apps. This example is an invoice processing app. What it does is it takes your PDF invoices, it chucks it into a model-driven app. So the model-driven app looks very, very much like CE. I can go into an item, and from within here, I'm using basic model-driven Power Platform functionality. There's been no code implemented here. It's all just standard functionality. And if you have a Power App per app license, you could be running this. And so what we have here is essentially the key header information. We have a scanned copy of an invoice, and we can go through the different processes and send it through the workflow and get a different scanned as well. Now, of course, we can start to incorporate OCR. The OCR tools at the moment, I believe they're getting better. When I played around with them about 6 months ago, they were a bit horrid, but they're getting a lot better now. And what happens with this one is it then you go through all the workflow, and once it's all finished and approved, it then sends it off and it integrates it into the system. This one integrates into AX 2012, but we do have other versions. We also have within D365 the ability to embed Power Apps into D365 itself. So this one I've embedded it. I've created my very own workspace, and I've got my little summary titles over here, and I have my little app over here. And this app here is designed, I don't know if any of you guys have UI flows and Power. Oh, don't make me do UI flows and Power Automate. I'll come back to in a moment to UI flows and Automate, Rishi. We can maybe have an open discussion about this one. because I'll be quite fascinated to find what other people are going to be about. What this app is doing is, for any of you guys that ever have a holding account where you chuck your asset information in, essentially what this is just it's a list of all the holding account items and allows the person to do all the journals, add it to an existing asset or create a brand new asset all within this one sort of screen. Rather than going through different screens, it does it all in the one sort of bucket. Really nice little way of incorporating and creating our own little workspace within FinOps and having Power Apps interact with that data and then Flow update the data. This one again, Power Apps is really, really useful for filling gaps. So remember back to when I said that finance and operations is an ERP system does everything well and nothing amazingly. And that's where Power Apps is really here to fill the gaps for us, because it allows you to enhance functionality. Let's face it, all the information is there, but from a financial point of view, maybe it's not doing the rebates the exact same way that you wanted to. Because in the Dynamics world, the FinOps world, to do a rebate calculation, you have to know the rebate percentage before the order is placed, which doesn't always work in the real world. So you can build on apps to enhance that functionality. And what this one does is it adds on rebates or gives a person a credit note. And another really cool part is it keeps everything in the one sort of screen. So rather than having to go, if you need to validate your VAT numbers, then leaving finance and operations, you can have that within your same screen. So if I go into, hopefully this is still working, purchase ledger, actually, it works in sales ledger too. But for whatever reason, my computer is having a heart attack and we're running out of time. So that's some ideas about how we can use Power Apps, what D365 does, and the really sort of little fun things that we have. Now, I saw you guys mentioning UI flows, and has anyone had a chance to use UI flows yet? I was just curious about that. So UI flows are essentially, if your system doesn't have a connector, you can essentially use what we call Selenium and UI, and you can create that sort of flow for you. By the way, this is the flow that I have for the purchase side. And they're fantastic, but it does require an extra license. So most of everything that I've been doing today, you could probably do on a Power App per app license or an entire Power App license. Unfortunately, Power Virtual Agents is priced differently as was what Power BI is priced. So we do have limitations in functionality, and UI flows, depending on what you needed to do, also has a different functionality as well. So, rightio, let's go through a bit of chat if that's the case, because we are at time. I appreciate it's been a little bit all over the place. It's just I have a lot of things to say, and it's a bit of fun. It's not supposed to be serious. So, okay, righty-o. Yes, so okay, Power App licenses, if you want to know a little bit of difference. So Power App per app license is around 10 quid or £7.50 if I'm right. A D365 license for the finance modules only is like £125 a month. So, there's a bit of difference. So you really need to be thinking about what you want your users to be and where you want them to be accessing the data. It is very much often that we have people asking us about licenses and trying to figure out the best ways to get around the high license prices. OCR, Power Apps itself has come a long way with its AI and its models and its solutions. This is based on your comment. We do have all these different modules, and they are getting a lot better. But you do build an AI model. Here we go. So these are the models that we have. The receipt processing one is fantastic for tax receipts or FPOS receipts. It works really, really well with it. The problem with FPOS receipts is that they're not tax receipts, are they? So if you get like print out your tax hotel bill or an invoice like that, that's a paper invoice, it ain't going to work on that. But if you get one that comes off like a till or a POS machine, it's going to work on that one. So that's the really cool thing about that. But this sort of, I've dropped a piece of paper. This sort of paper is designed for form processing. And we do have a form process AI as well. The problem with that is you have to train it for every different type of form you have. So for every vendor that you have that you want to go through the form processing, you're going to have to train a new model for it, which I think is fantastic and great. Gary, I fully agree with you with UI flows. I've been trying to get them to work myself, and it's great. It's one of these things that it demonstrates amazingly. So you'll have someone come in and they'll demonstrate it, and it'll be amazing because they've got like this one little process going down, and it's gonna click off a whole bunch of ideas for you. But then when it comes down to the practicality of it, it is very, very hard to work if you're not a coder. If you're a coder, amazing. You're gonna love it because it is very, very codey, and I can show you guys at another time how I've used UI, or I can at least get it open for you. If any of you guys haven't seen it before, I can at least open it for you. But it does look codey. I think HTML and JSON is the borderline code for me. Very much HTML. JSON I've gotten used to, but when it starts to get onto HTML, and when you have to start understanding HTML, I feel like that's gone past the citizen developer side onto the actual developer side. But I suppose everyone has it working in that sort of sense. My ideas for what UI flows are really going to be powerful for is, again, for minimizing the clicks that you have to take. So for example, if I wanted to export a bunch of reports, I would have to open them, I would have to export them, and I would have to save them. That's what I think we could do with UI flows in terms of the financial elements of it, how we could use that. If you have this tool, particularly around your month end sort of stuff, how many times at month end are you generating a bucket load of reports? You're exporting them into Excel because God knows they cannot cope without it being in Excel. And then you're then emailing it out. So that's what we can definitely use UI for. So yeah, rightio, that's me. Thank you guys so much for being so wonderful and so welcoming. I love finance. We love numbers. We love our information, but that's about it. I will stop my presentation now. I have contact information, I suppose. If anyone ever wants to contact me, hit me up on LinkedIn, is one way, or on Twitter, Chris, you're so sweet. Or you can email me. I've chucked in my work email here. You're going to get a quicker response from my work email than through my non-work email. I'll be brutally honest with you. But, you just send me an email.
Thank you so much for that. It's an extremely insightful presentation. So thank you so much.
That's okay. Next week's looking fun. I'm looking forward to finding out about Business Central. It's always been the white horse for me.
What is the difference, Julia? Can you explain quickly what the difference is with FinOps?
Big companies versus small companies.
Cool. Okay.
Different functionality as well. They have two different parents. Put it that way. We're all adopted now. It's like adopted children. We're all been adopted into the D365 umbrella. That's our new parent. But I have different grandparents to what Business Central has. Or Finance and Operations is a different grandparent to the Business Central. Business Central is designed for the small to medium size, and FinOps is designed for the medium to large size, very much a global operations. And the database is in a different place as well.
Good stuff. Nice summary.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the talk. It's great to have you on it, and thank you everyone for joining. And yeah, look forward to seeing the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. Yeah, let us know what you think, guys, as well. Fill out the feedback form, and yeah, we haven't done much on the Teams channel yet with PPF, but we will. Let's start getting some conversations going on there. I think that'd be really interesting, especially with these new areas like dynamics and things like that. I mean, it'd be really interesting to hear if people start to use it, what their experiences are like, and everything else. So great.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Julia. That was really insightful.
That's okay, guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Julia. Catch you next time.
Bye.
I'll put the link up for the next session soon.